This is the Behind the Line podcast, coming to you from the wacky left coast capital of Seattle. News from the Pacific Northwest, the left coast, the U.S., and the world that matters. Stories the MSM won't talk about. Deciphering the truth through all the lies. For more, visit BehindTheLinePodcast.com.
Well, if you think that being a prepper is just for apocalypse and end of the world, then you haven't been watching the news. Hurricane Helene struck several states. Florida, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Tennessee, and Virginia all got hit hard, either directly by the hurricane or the rain left over. In some states, 30 inches of rain fell. These states were devastated by flooding and wind and storm damage, power outages. So this could happen anywhere. Like, maybe you don't live in a hurricane area, but tornadoes, earthquakes, power outages. I mean, this should give you pause if you're not prepping right now. And if you're thinking that the federal government is coming to help these people, you'd also be wrong. Senators are trying to pass bills to get funding to help these people. So who steps up? Private organizations, nonprofit organizations like World Kitchen, who is funded by celebrity chef Jose Andres. They've served over 64,000 meals so far in these hurricane-hit states. 5,200 sandwiches. 6,200 gallons of water they've brought in, where the government has failed to step up. Georgia has suspended the gas tax for people because of what's going on, which is a nice move. They still have hundreds of thousands of people without power there. Overall, in the Southeast, more than 1.4 million people without power. So think about this, these disasters can happen anywhere. So we need to be prepping. We need to be prepared for this stuff. Nobody's coming to help you. You are responsible for yourself. Don't rely on others. Here's your president with a little statement about what they're going to do for you in hurricane areas.
Yes, it's tragic. Matter of fact, we're trying to get the exact number. My FEMA advisor is on the ground in Florida right now. There's a distinction between the numbers that FEMA's used and the ones that are used by the locals. So it really is amazing. You saw the photographs. It's stunning.
It's unbelievable.
It really is.
Such a wide area.
And we've given them all everything that we have. We're on the ground ahead of time, so we're working hard.
Are there any more resources the federal government could be giving them?
No, we've given them, we have pre-planned a significant amount of it, even though they didn't ask for it yet. Hadn't asked for it yet.
We've given them everything we've got. There's no other help coming. They didn't ask for it. This is your president. This is your commander-in-chief. I didn't know we had to ask for disaster relief when there's obviously been a large natural disaster. This guy is a lunatic. They didn't ask for it. They shouldn't have to ask for it. And if that's not enough to piss you off, listen to this story from the local news in North Carolina, South Carolina. Maybe this will.
There are days after Helene wreaked havoc in North Carolina, but one Pageland man's efforts to help are now the source of controversy. He flew his own chopper on his own dime to help stranded victims, but that man says he abandoned his rescue missions after a fire official threatened to have him thrown in jail. Well, that man now wants answers and turned to Queen City News Chief Investigator Jody Barr to help figure out what went wrong here.
This is the original post that I was reading when I decided to go up and help. It's a long post, but she's saying that her kids and family and animals are trapped. No way out, no supplies, and the only way in or out is accessible by helicopter. Limited cell service and no water since Friday morning. I thought I have a helicopter and maybe I can help.
Jordan Sidham piled food and water into his helicopter Saturday and headed up toward Banner Elk, the only way through a mountain gap in Lake Lure.
This is the mountain valley that you would have to fly to get to Black Mountain, where we were escorting people out. This is a mountain range, and this is a mountain range. The only place to fly through with bad visibility, low cloud coverage, is Lake Lure.
The cries for help from people stranded without food, water, or electricity hit social media soon after the flooding last Friday.
But my parents are stuck there. Their address is Banner Elk. They are in the first condo. If you receive this, please give me a call back. Thank you.
Sidham's phone started lighting up on Saturday with people begging for help.
I could hear the desperation in her voice. This is multiple phone calls I've received like this, voicemails, text messages, and you could hear people desperate for help.
Sidham and his son rescued 4 people on Saturday and spent the night in a nearby pilot's lounge, then decided to fly again Sunday morning.
I spoke with my son, which is my co-pilot. I said, hey, do you want to go back out and try to help today? And his response was, there's so many messages, I don't think we can't not go help.
Sidham and his son were headed up to Black Mountain. Flight tracking shows no flight restrictions in place Saturday or Sunday morning when Sidham flew through the Lake Lure Gap. But that was all about to change. The Sidham spotted an older couple waving for help, then landed in what's left of their driveway.
Hey, I want you to let me get in, you step out and go out, help her in, put her bag in the back, get her strapped in. I'm going to take her down, come back. I'll take him, I'll come back, and then I'll get you, okay?
I originally left my son, co-pilot, on the side of the mountain. It was kind of unstable, so I didn't want to put more weight in the helicopter to lift back off. So I left my son with the other victim, and I was just going to take one person down at the time. And you could hear me in the video talking through with the victims and with my son what we were going to do.
3 minutes away, Sidham spotted a group of rescuers just down the river. He landed and found someone in charge.
Told him my background experience, law enforcement, firefighting, pilot. He immediately started helping with coordination. He gave me radio frequencies to coordinate with them on, set up a landing area for me to come back with the other victim. And in the middle of the whole conversation and then blocking the road off, I was greeted by the, at that time I didn't know, but Lake Lure fire chief or assistant chief maybe, and he shut down the whole operation. So at that point I felt like the conversation wasn't going any further, and again he asked me to leave, and I said, hey, I have no problem getting out of your area. If that's what you want us to do, we'll leave, no issue. At that point I asked him, what was the reason I had to leave them there, and he said, again, you're interfering with my operation. I just need you to get out of the area. I said, sir, I don't know where you were trained at, but I know how my training is, and I'm not going to leave personnel behind. I'm going back to get my co-pilot. He said, if you turn around and go back up the mountain, you're going to be arrested. I said, well, sir, I'm going back to get my co-pilot. I don't know what to tell you. And he said, I'm letting you know. And at that point, he waved for 2 law enforcement officers to come over and told me that again, if I go back up the mountain, I would be arrested.
He flew the 3-minute trip back, picked up his son, and left the woman's husband behind.
I'm sure he was flooded with emotions and trying to rescue other people, and I just felt that it was best at the time to leave. So I did follow his instructions, and I had a conversation with the female victim before I left, apologizing and explaining. She was standing there. She heard the whole conversation. And they were both very, very surprised, very upset. The husband, as I was leaving off of the side of the mountain, at that point, separated from his wife, he was upset. I can only imagine.
Sidham and his nearly 1,400 flight hours turned his chopper around and headed back to South Carolina, passing people waving for help along the way.
As I was actually leaving to go back to get my son, the original chief or captain that I spoke to, his crew and himself, they came back over and said, hey man, we can't tell you to go get the victim. We can't even ask you to go get the victim, but we can tell you if you come back with the victim, we'll have you a designated landing spot, and we'll make sure they don't come over here.
So there was no flight restriction when you went in?
No flight restriction when I went in. It went in place 20 or 30 minutes after the confrontation with Mr.
You feel like that was coincidental, or do you think that was because of what happened.
I don't think it can be coincidental when there has not been one in place the day before doing rescue operations, the night of, the morning of, that took place after our altercation. I think there would have never been a TFR put in place had we not had that conversation. If I had to do it over again, I would have stopped and I would have rescued as many people until they decided they were going to arrest me.
Well, for now, we've chosen not to name that Lake Lure fire official because communications in and out of that town are still difficult. We want to include his side in this story, and if and when he responds to our messages, we will include that. The good news is I saw a video of a Coast Guard helicopter landing in Lake Lure this morning, so hopefully some of those mountain rescues are underway today. From Pageland, Jody Barr, Queen City News.
It's amazing to me the egos that prevail in the fire service. This is a mostly volunteer fire department, 2 paid staff on duty every day and 1 chief, and the rest are volunteers. So you've got a guy in a tiny little department in the middle of nowhere who doesn't have resources he needs to conduct these rescues, threatening to arrest a man who's got fire service and law enforcement experience and is a pilot and willing to use his helicopter for free to pick people up. There was no, restrictions on flight in the area. I was a pilot for a while. I worked for the fire service for 17 years and law enforcement for 8. I can tell you this is ridiculous. And there's no requirements to file a flight plan or anything like this in a helicopter of that size. The fact that he turned those people away and threatened to arrest them, that guy should be fired for that. And I hope the community raises a stink about it. These natural disasters are no time to let your little ego about who's in charge, who's making the calls, who's deciding what goes where to take over. But that's government at work right there for you. So I'm sure you've seen that Iran attacked Israel with missiles. These are some videos I got off some Telegram channels that I keep a track of. One other thing that's not being widely reported was this in 2 cities in Israel, Jaffa, I think, and Tel Aviv, gunmen opened fire on civilians and killed a number of civilians just before this missile attack started. So a little bit of coordination inside the country as well, not just these missiles coming in, but the videos of these missiles are incredible. Like when you read the Bible verse about the stars falling from the sky, I don't know. What does that look like to you? Israel obviously has said that they're going to retaliate or strike back, that Iran's made a huge mistake. The U.S. will almost certainly be involved in that, and that is probably going to drag us into a wider war in the area. So I hope you're ready for this. This could kick off at any time. I mean, it has kicked off. It's been a slow roll. This is going to happen. We are going to wind up in some kind of Middle Eastern or larger scale war because of all of this, and I hope you're preparing for that, because who knows how that's going to affect us here in the U.S. And the fact that we have so many illegals who have crossed the border, and just recently they found the weapons cache at the border with RPGs and ammunition and IEDs, and that's just the one they found. You know that there's plenty they have not found, and you know that there's terrorists inside this country. There is credible information that there are terror cells operating in this country, and then no doubt they are just waiting for the day or the word to come down from Iran to take action. So the fact that this is happening right now in the Middle East, don't think that we are immune from attacks here. Maybe not to this scale, but definitely people on the ground wreaking havoc in public places. So this is the time to be aware where you're at and not maybe go to large events, maybe not be in big crowds of people or places that would make a good target for these terrorists to take action. Just be aware of what you're doing and where you're at and who's around you and what's going on at all times. China, Russia, and North Korea will almost certainly come to the aid of Iran if the U.S. gets involved in the attack, along with these other Middle Eastern countries around Israel that support Iran will all back Iran up. So it's just something to definitely keep your eye on. This could go kinetic very quickly. Natural disasters, war, the presidential election, civil unrest. This is the time to be preparing, to get your stuff in order, to get your family ready to deal with this stuff. Supply chain shortages, food shortages, gas shortages, whatever it may be. Get your house in order, folks.
Thanks for listening to the Behind the Line podcast. For more, visit behindthelinepodcast.com, leftcoastnews.net, or shtf.net. You can listen to our podcast on Spotify, Amazon Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio Podcasts, and anywhere else podcasts are found. Please subscribe, like, and share to get our content out there. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, X, Truth Social, Gab, Telegram, Substack, Brighteon, Rumble, the Newscaster Studio, and all other forms of social media. Thanks for listening.